"It hurts, sir. Please help me." He turned slowly, scanning the sidewalk. There, nestled between the marble pillars of Reese Holdings' corporate tower and a steel trash bin, was a small, hunched figure. A little black girl, no more than 6, crouched in a puddle of melting snow. Her sweater hung off one shoulder, stained and ragged, and her jeans were torn across both knees. Her bare feet were purple and raw against the frozen pavement. Jonathan blinked. Her lips trembled. Her left eye was swollen. Blood, dry and crusted, stained her temple. One arm clutched her ribs, and her other hand reached out just a few inches off the ground, extended not with desperation, but with resignation. "Security," his assistant barked, already pulling out her phone. "We've got another one." "Another one?" Jonathan's stomach turned. His voice emerged low, like a growl. "Don't touch her." The assistant stiffened. "Sir, we can't just leave. I said don't touch her." The child coughed, a weak, sharp sound like glass breaking. Then she spoke again, barely a whisper, but it sliced through the noise of the street like a blade. "They made me eat from the floor." Jonathan blinked. The driver took a step closer, eyes wide. "Sir?" "Did she say?" "They locked the fridge for 4 days. I ate toothpaste." Jonathan's knuckles whitened. "They made me sleep in the closet," she added, voice brittle. "With the rats." He knelt. For a man who spent his days commanding empires and manipulating global markets, he had never felt so small. "Who did that to you?" he asked quietly. Anna didn't answer at first. Then, so low he barely heard her, she said, "They said I was born dirty. That's why Mama gave me away." His chest tightened, but then came the part that shattered him. "Daddy, my new daddy, he came into the closet at night. He said if I screamed, I'd never wake up." Jonathan froze. The silence stretched so long, even the wind seemed to still. She wasn't crying. Not because she wasn't in pain, she'd cried all she could. And now, there was nothing left. Jonathan's voice, when it came, was barely audible. "Anna." "Who knows?" "No one," she said. "No one believes the garbage kids. If you feel for Anna and her story touched your heart, give this video a like. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching too. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. His assistant was still talking into her phone, reciting PR protocols, corporate risks, legal disclaimers. Jonathan stood, his face stone cold. "Cancel the meeting." "Sir, the Singapore." "Cancel it." He turned back to Anna. "Can you stand?" She tried. Her knees buckled. He caught her, not cradling, just steadying. Her head drooped into his shoulder, and for the first time since his own daughter's funeral 7 years ago, Jonathan Reese felt tears sting his eyes. "We're going to fix this," he whispered. "I don't want to go back," she muttered. "Please, not the lady with the long nails." Jonathan stiffened. He looked up at his assistant. "Call my legal team, now, and get someone from the hospital." Quietly, Anna pulled away just a little and looked him dead in the eye. For the first time, her voice wasn't a whisper. It was low, steady, and terrifyingly clear. "If they find me again, they'll bury me next time." Jonathan didn't flinch. "No," he said, "they won't." And just like that, everything he thought he knew about power, about influence, about what mattered shifted forever. The hospital was only 12 blocks from Reese Holdings, but for Jonathan, the drive felt endless. Anna lay curled beneath a fleece blanket in the back seat, eyes half closed, cheeks ashen. Every few minutes, her shoulders twitched, memories trying to claw their way out. She hadn't spoken since those haunting words outside the tower. "If they find me again, they'll bury me next time." Jonathan's driver kept glancing at the rearview mirror, unsure whether to break the silence. Beside him, the assistant fidgeted with her phone, waiting for instructions. But Jonathan said nothing. His fingers tapped against his thigh, slow, controlled. The way a man kept himself from breaking. The hospital staff had been briefed. He'd called in every favor he could think of. When the car pulled up to the private entrance of Lenox Hill Children's Unit, 2 nurses and a trauma pediatrician were already waiting. As soon as they opened the door, Anna recoiled. "Easy," Jonathan said softly. No one's going to touch you without your okay. Not anymore. The doctor, a gray-haired woman named Dr. Marie Eldridge, knelt to eye level. Anna, my name is Marie. I'm just here to make sure you're not hurting inside. Can I look at your hands? Anna didn't move. She hasn't eaten in days, Jonathan added. And she may have internal injuries. She talked about being hit, locked up, worse. Dr. Eldridge nodded with a gravity that came from decades of seeing the worst. It's okay, baby, she whispered. You're safe now, I promise. It took time, gentle coaxing. The blanket stayed wrapped around Anna like armor. But eventually, with Jonathan kneeling beside her, she let the nurse check her pulse, feel her ribs, one of which seemed fractured, and take her temperature. She's severely malnourished, the nurse whispered, and dehydrated. We'll need full labs, x-rays, and, her voice dropped lower, we'll need to call the trauma counselor. She has signs of sexual assault. Jonathan's jaw clenched. I don't want her put in the system. Not yet. Not until I know who did this. The nurse hesitated. Legally, we have to notify Child Protective Services. Then delay it, Jonathan snapped. Call whoever you need to call to buy us a few hours. I'll cover whatever it takes. Dr. Eldridge's voice was firmer. Mr. Reese, I know you're trying to protect her. But the law, don't talk to me about the law, he said, standing. The law let this happen. Let me fix it before it buries her again. The doctor studied him. Something in her expression softened. We'll give her an alias. List her as a Jane Doe for now. Jonathan nodded. Thank you. While Anna was taken for further examination, Jonathan sat alone in the waiting room, elbows on knees, staring at the floor. His assistant approached hesitantly. The press caught wind. Someone at HQ must have leaked a photo. They're already asking why you were seen carrying a child into an ER. He didn't even blink. Let them ask. Do you want me to issue a statement? Draft something about philanthropy, a rescue initiative. No spin, no story, not yet. The assistant hesitated. What do you want me to do? Jonathan looked up slowly. Find out who her last foster family was. Names, addresses, background, and pull every public record on every child abuse case in the city from the last 5 years. Filter by dropped cases. Her lips parted in shock. That'll take days. Then start now. He stood and walked down the hall, his steps echoing in the quiet wing. Through a half-closed door, he saw Anna lying on a gurney. Her small body was hooked to IV fluids. A warm light bathed her face, and for a moment, she looked peaceful. But then her eyes fluttered open, and the peace vanished. Panic rippled through her features. Jonathan stepped in gently. Hey. It's me. She blinked, tears forming. Did I do something wrong? She whispered. He knelt beside her again. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. What happened to you wasn't your fault. She looked away. They said I was bad. That's why it happened. Jonathan's voice cracked. They lied. Silence settled over them. After a minute, she whispered, Do you have kids? His heart skipped. I had a daughter. She was about your age when we lost her. Anna didn't ask how. She just nodded, as if understanding that kind of grief without needing the story. I don't want to go to another house, she said suddenly. They always smile first, then they hurt you when no one's looking. Jonathan leaned forward. I won't let that happen again. Not to you. She reached out and touched his coat sleeve. Her fingers were ice cold. Even under the blankets. I heard what the nurse said, she murmured. They're going to call them, aren't they? The people who take kids. Jonathan didn't know what to say. I don't want to disappear again, Anna whispered. They always make you disappear. Jonathan stared at her, his chest tightening. Then he stood, pulled out his phone, and dialed. George, he said when his lawyer answered. I need an emergency injunction. No state custody for a minor girl named Anna. Use my name, my resources, everything. Jonathan, do you know what that'll look like to the board? I don't care what it looks like. Just get it done. He hung up, turned back to Anna. and gently placed his hand over hers. "No one's taking you anywhere," he said. "Not unless it's your choice." And for the first time since he'd met her, Anna allowed herself to cry. Not because she was afraid, but because, for once, someone had stayed. Jonathan Reese rarely watched the morning news. He preferred data briefs and executive summaries. But that morning, he sat on the leather couch of his penthouse, eyes fixed on the television like a man waiting for a verdict. His phone buzzed with emails, stock alerts, and investor queries. But he didn't reach for it. Not yet. On screen, a local anchor spoke with dramatic concern. An unidentified child, believed to be under 7, was brought to Lenox Hill Hospital late last night. Sources say the child appeared severely malnourished, injured, and may have been the victim of prolonged abuse. While the hospital has not released any names, photographs leaked by a passerby suggest the child was escorted by none other than Jonathan Reese, Billionaire CEO of Reese Holdings. The image flashed. Jonathan kneeling beside Anna, wrapped in a fleece blanket. On the icy sidewalk, he sighed. A second anchor chimed in. Speculation is swirling online. Some say it's a PR stunt. Others wonder if Reese may have adopted the child. Still no confirmation from his office. Jonathan muted the screen. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his temples. The pressure was mounting. The board was already in panic mode, worried about optics and shareholder reactions. His assistant had texted twice, asking if he wanted to release a statement. He didn't. He stood, buttoned his vest, and walked to the window. From his perch 40 floors above the city, the world looked clean, controlled. But down there, in the alleys and shelters and darkened closets, it was something else entirely. Anna was still in the hospital. After a night of observation and trauma assessments, the doctors had agreed under pressure and some very large donations to hold off on notifying CPS. But time was short. Jonathan had bought hours, maybe a day. He needed more than time. He needed truth. He turned and picked up his phone. "Janet," he said when his assistant answered, "meet me at the office, and bring me everything you found on Anna's past placements." Within an hour, they were seated in his office, glass walls drawn for privacy. Jonathan stared at the thin manila folder on the table. It looked too small to hold the weight of what that child had endured. "2 foster homes on record," Janet began. "One in the Bronx. One in East Harlem. Both homes passed initial inspections. But there are discrepancies. Define discrepancies. In the second home, East Harlem neighbors filed 2 anonymous complaints about screaming and suspected neglect. But no formal charges were filed. The caseworker assigned to Anna closed the file after only 2 visits. Jonathan's brow furrowed. What happened to the caseworker? Transferred. Shortly after the report was closed. Cover up? Possibly. Or indifference. Both are poison. Jonathan opened the file. Inside was a faded intake photo. Anna, 5 years old, staring into the camera with wide, empty eyes. "I want surveillance," he said. "Cameras, street cams, check the neighborhood. I want to know who visited that house, who lived there. I want a list of every adult with access to her." "We're already on it," Janet said. "Also, this might be something." She slid another document forward. A hospital admission form from 2 months ago. Anna was brought into an urgent care in Queens with a broken wrist. The form says she fell downstairs. Did anyone question it? The attending noted the injury seemed inconsistent with a fall, but CPS declined to investigate. Jonathan stared at the page, his jaw clenched. "I want that attending's name. Already contacted. She remembers Anna." Said the child was trembling the entire visit. When she tried to ask questions, the foster mother interrupted and said Anna was developmentally slow and couldn't speak properly. Jonathan cursed under his breath. "And no one pushed back?" Janet shook her head. The doctor filed a suspicion report. It went nowhere. A silence fell between them. Finally, Janet spoke. "You're doing the right thing, sir. But the system, this won't be easy. There are protections in place that shield abusers more than children. You're poking a very dangerous bear." "I'm not poking," Jonathan said. "I'm cutting its damn head off." Just then his phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Eldridge. She's awake. Asked for you. Jonathan grabbed his coat and stood. Tell legal to prep for a fight. And Janet, thank you. She nodded, watching him leave with a look that mingled admiration and concern. Back at the hospital, Anna was sitting up, her IV still taped to her arm, but her eyes brighter. She held a small stuffed bear, likely donated from the children's wing, and fiddled with its ears as he entered. Hey there, Jonathan said gently. She gave a small smile. They gave me Jell-O. I never had that before. He chuckled, taking the seat beside her bed. It's a classic. She paused, then looked up. Did they come yet? Who? The ones who take kids. No, he said. They're not coming today. She leaned back, relief washing over her face. But then she added quietly, they always come. Even when people say they won't. Jonathan studied her. Not this time. Not if I can help it. Anna seemed to consider that. Then she turned her head and whispered, my old daddy. He wore a red watch. He would take it off before he came in the closet. Jonathan felt a chill roll through him. I remember the ticking, she added. Tick, tick, tick. That's how I knew it was going to happen. Jonathan swallowed hard. Anna. Would you feel okay talking to someone about that? Someone who can help make sure he never hurts anyone again? She hesitated. Only if you're there. I will be. He meant it. And as he sat beside her, holding her tiny hand, Jonathan realized this wasn't just about one girl. It was about every child like her, forgotten, betrayed, unseen. And if the system wouldn't protect them, then he would. Even if it cost him everything. Later that afternoon, Jonathan found himself standing in front of the small white headstone tucked deep within Greenwood Cemetery. The sky had turned gray, the clouds low and heavy, mirroring the weight in his chest. Snow flurries drifted through the air, clinging to his black coat. He wasn't here for closure, there was no such thing. He was here because he needed strength. And this was the only place he'd ever felt it break and rebuild him all at once. He looked down at the engraving. Claire Reese, 2011-2017. Our brightest light, gone too soon. I met a little girl, Claire. He said quietly, kneeling before the grave. Her name's Anna. She's 6, just like you were. Oh, the silence answered him like it always did. She's been through hell. More than I can describe. She's hurt, scared, and brave in ways I can't explain. He paused. She reminds me of you. He reached into his coat and pulled out a tiny red scarf, Claire's worn. Soft from years of being folded in drawers, he couldn't bring himself to empty. He placed it on the headstone, letting the wind catch its edge. I didn't save you, he whispered, but maybe I can save her. He stood, shoulders squared, the resolve hardened in his spine. Whatever it took, money, power, reputation, he'd spend it all. Anna would not return to the darkness. By the time he returned to the hospital, dusk had begun to fall. The city glowed in amber streetlights and distant sirens. In the children's wing, a nurse smiled softly as he approached. She's been asking for you, Mr. Reese. Drew a picture for you. Jonathan smiled faintly and knocked gently on Anna's door before stepping inside. Anna sat propped up with 2 pillows. A tray of untouched mashed potatoes and peas in front of her. Crayons and paper were scattered across the bed. She brightened when she saw him. I made you something. He walked closer, his eyes landing on the paper. A stick figure of a tall man with gray hair stood next to a smaller one with brown curls. Between them, a giant heart. Above it, written in shaky letters, me, Mr. J. Jonathan took the drawing like it was priceless. This is beautiful. I love it. You can keep it, she said, so you don't forget me. His chest tightened. I couldn't forget you if I tried. She giggled softly, then looked down. Did you go somewhere? He nodded. To see someone I love very much. Was she a little girl like me? Yes, he said, his voice low. She was everything. Anna reached out, placing her hand gently on his. Did someone hurt her too? Jonathan hesitated, then shook his head. Number? She got very sick. And we couldn't stop it. I'm sorry, Anna whispered. Thank you, he said. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared pain wrapping around them like an old coat. A knock broke the stillness. It was Dr. Eldridge, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. Mr. Reese, may I speak with you a moment? Jonathan nodded. I'll be right back. Anna. Outside, in the hallway, Eldridge glanced around before speaking. The preliminary tests are in. She has multiple fractures in various stages of healing, including her ribs and wrist. There are signs of past trauma consistent with sexual abuse. We've documented everything, including the statements she gave you. If this goes to court, it will be solid. Jonathan exhaled slowly. Then let's move. There's more, she added, voice dropping. A CPS representative called the hospital directly, furious they weren't notified sooner. They're demanding custody. I delayed them, said we were waiting for site clearance, but they're going to show up. Soon. How soon? Maybe tomorrow morning. Jonathan's jaw tensed. We're not letting them take her. Eldridge looked pained. Legally, I can't hold them off without a judge's order. You need something stronger than sympathy, Mr. Reese. You need a legal wall. Working on it, he said. My lawyers filed an emergency injunction. But I want to get ahead of them. She raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? He looked toward Anna's room. I'm going to find the people who did this to her. And I'm going to make sure the whole damn city hears about it. That night, in his penthouse, he called George, his lead attorney. I need full surveillance coverage of that East Harlem foster home, he ordered. Anything from traffic cams, utility logs, neighbors, especially around the nights she was admitted to the ER. Find out if that man, her foster father, had any priors. Check aliases, sealed records, everything. George sighed. Jonathan, you're trying to outmaneuver a system built to protect itself. You'll be dragging city departments, caseworkers, judges, then drag them. And if it backfires? Jonathan didn't hesitate. I've lived most of my life making the rich richer. This is the first thing that actually matters. George was silent for a moment. Then, understood. We'll push hard, but get ready for them to push back harder. As he ended the call, Jonathan walked to the floor-to-ceiling window again. The city glittered like a promise below. Somewhere in that sprawl, there were others like Anna, forgotten, hidden, written off. Not this time. He picked up Anna's drawing from the table, smoothing the paper as if it were gold leaf. Hang in there, kid, he murmured. Justice is coming. At exactly 7:12 a.m., Jonathan's phone vibrated on the nightstand. He'd barely slept. His thoughts had been spinning all night, replaying Anna's words, the ticking of a red watch, the closet, the silence she'd been forced to live in. The message came from George. We found something. Meet me at 1840. 2 Claremont Avenue. Bring your ID. Don't bring Anna. Jonathan was out the door in 20 minutes. Claremont Avenue in East Harlem was a quiet residential block lined with aging brownstones and low-income walk-ups. The building in question looked almost benign, worn brick, paint peeling from window frames, a sagging stoop, but nothing that screamed horror. Evil rarely advertised itself. George stood beside an unmarked sedan, coat collar up against the biting wind. With him were 2 private investigators and a young tech specialist. All looked grim. What did you find? Jonathan asked, skipping formalities. We pulled security cam footage from across the street, George said. Check this out. He handed Jonathan a tablet. The video played on loop. A dark SUV pulling into the alley behind the building. Night after night, same time. A man exited, tall, heavy-set, wearing a red watch clearly visible in the streetlight's glow. Is that same man Anna described? George confirmed. Her foster father, Marcus Hale, no criminal record, but Z. He handed Jonathan another document. Jonathan scanned it. He changed his name 5 years ago. Before the first adoption, George added. His birth name is Trevor Banks, and under that name, he was arrested twice for domestic battery. Charges dropped, sealed. Jonathan's hands tightened around the file. What else? The tech girl Emily spoke up. We checked energy usage in the apartment. Spikes every night around 1:30 a.m. in the basement unit. Likely a space heater or camera system. something isolated from the rest of the apartment. George nodded toward the building. And then there's this. Inside, the investigators had already gained access. The apartment smelled like old bleach and stale cigarettes. Toys littered the living room floor, carefully arranged but untouched, like a set staged for inspection. "Landlord let us in," George said. "Hale's been missing since yesterday. Packed a bag, according to a neighbor. Took off fast." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "He knows we're onto him." "He knows," George confirmed. "But come see this." They led him to the back of the apartment, down a narrow stairwell that creaked with each step. The basement was unfinished, dimly lit and cold. A concrete floor, bare bulbs overhead. One wall held metal shelving. The other, Jonathan froze. A narrow wooden door. No handle. Just a latch. One of the investigators pried it open. The space behind it wasn't large, maybe 4 feet wide, 6 feet long. No windows, no light. Inside were discarded blankets, a plastic bowl, and a broken child's sandal. "Jesus Christ," Jonathan breathed. Emily stepped forward. "We found these wedged under the floorboards." She held up 2 small items in sealed bags. A piece of crayon, covered paper, torn and water-stained, and a tiny voice recorder. Jonathan took the recorder, pressed play. A child's voice crackled through the speaker. "Anna, day 7, she whispered. Still no food. Still dark. I miss my mommy. Not the new one, the real one. If someone hears this, please don't let them put me back." The audio clicked off. No one spoke. Jonathan's hand shook as he slipped the recorder into his coat pocket. "We give this to the press." George raised an eyebrow. "You sure? They need to see this, hear her voice. If the public hears what she survived, no judge will dare hand her back to the system. We're walking a legal tightrope here. I know. But Anna's not just a girl in a file anymore. She's a child with a voice. We make sure that voice is heard." George nodded slowly. "Then we move fast. Hale's on the run, but we've put out feelers. Private security, bounty contacts. He'll surface." As they exited the building, Jonathan paused at the top of the stairs. He turned and looked back at the darkness beneath the floorboards. At the silence, still living there. "Burn that closet to the ground," he said to George. "Metaphorically or not, I don't care." Back at the hospital, Anna was sitting up, coloring again. This time, she drew a house, a bright yellow one with big windows and flowers. "I want a room with a dog," she said when Jonathan entered. He smiled gently. "What kind of dog?" "A big, fluffy one that sleeps at the door." He sat beside her. "We'll make that happen. But I need you to be brave again." Anna looked up. "I found the man who hurt you, and I have something that you recorded, your voice. You were so strong to do that, Anna." She bit her lip, eyes wide. "Are you going to tell everyone?" "I want to. So they can help protect you. So no one ever hurts another kid like this again." She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. "But only if you're next to me when they hear it." He reached for her hand. "Always." That night, Jonathan made one more call to a journalist he trusted, someone with a record of exposing systemic failure. He sent the files, the photos, the recording, and within hours, the world began to learn Anna's name not as a statistic, but as a survivor. A spark had been lit. Now, it was time to watch it burn through every lie the system had buried. The news segment aired at 6 p.m. sharp. The same time millions of Americans tuned in after dinner, their living rooms glowing with the dull blue of the evening report. But tonight, the broadcast was different. Tonight, it didn't begin with the stock market or weather or political pundits. It began with a name. "Her name is Anna," the anchor said, solemn, sincere. "She is 6 years old. She weighs 38 pounds. She has been in 2 foster homes since the age of 4, and for the past year, she has been living in what authorities are now calling a house of horror." Jonathan watched from the hospital room, the television muted. He didn't need the volume, he'd memorized every word. Anna sat beside him on the bed, tucked under a fleece blanket, a bowl of macaroni in her lap. Her stuffed bear lay next to her, freshly cleaned by the hospital laundry staff. On screen, the segment cut to the footage of the tiny closet in the basement, the sandal, the crayon drawing, and then without embellishment the audio. Anna's voice. Day 7. Still no food, still dark. Anna's hand tightened around Jonathan's prydick. She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She watched. When the clip ended, the anchor returned. Authorities say the man believed responsible, Marcus Hale, is currently wanted for questioning. Law enforcement confirmed they are cooperating with private security to locate him. Sources close to the case say the child is in stable condition under medical care. Mr. Jonathan Reese, CEO of Reese Holdings, has filed for temporary guardianship. The camera cut to a grainy still, Jonathan carrying Anna in his arms. The image rippled across the country in minutes. By 6:15, Jonathan's office phone was flooded with messages, CEOs, activists, strangers. By 6:30, his email inbox had over 4,000 unread messages. Some offered help, others demanded answers. A few expressed rage, but it was the silence from the state that bothered him most. No call from Child Protective Services, no public response from the agency, just silence. It meant they were scared, or planning. At 7:02 p.m., Jonathan received a text from George. "We have a problem. Meet me at your office. Urgently." He turned to Anna. "I have to go for a little bit. Just a few hours." She looked up. "Will you come back before bedtime?" "Always." She nodded and handed him the bear. "Take him. So you're not alone." Jonathan smiled and slipped the toy into his coat pocket. "He'll keep me safe." When he arrived at Reese Holdings, George was already waiting in the conference room, pacing. "They're filing an emergency override," he said as soon as Jonathan entered. "CPS, claiming you used your influence to interfere with state custody. They're arguing that media exposure constitutes coercion and endangerment." Jonathan laughed dryly. "They're saying I endangered her? They're saying your presence compromises objectivity. They're petitioning for an emergency removal order tonight." A silence fell between them. Jonathan exhaled, eyes narrowing. "Let them try. I already filed an emergency response with the judge on duty," George added. "But we need to move faster. If we wait, they'll drag her back into the system before we can stop it." "What do you need from me?" "A press conference. Now, on your terms. Show the public what this fight really looks like. We expose their tactics before they twist the story." Jonathan nodded slowly. "Then let's give them the truth." 30 minutes later, he stood at the podium in the Reese Holdings media room. Cameras blinked red. Lights burned hot against his skin. "Good evening," he began. "My name is Jonathan Reese. I'm not here tonight as a CEO or a businessman. I'm here as a man who saw a child asking for help and chose not to walk away." He paused. His voice stayed calm, clear. "For the past several days, I've cared for a girl named Anna, a 6-year-old survivor of systemic abuse, neglect, and unspeakable cruelty. She was locked in a basement closet, starved, beaten, and worse. She cried out for help many times before. No one answered. "Ah," a murmur rippled through the crowd. "I did not rescue Anna to exploit her. I did not save her for a headline. I did it because she needed someone who wouldn't flinch when it got hard. And I will not hand her back to the same broken system that failed her." He leaned forward slightly. "Tonight, Child Protective Services is attempting to remove her from care. Again, they say I am interfering. They say I am compromising the process." He let the silence hang. "Maybe I am, but I would rather be accused of caring too much than standing by while this country forgets another little girl who fell through the cracks." The room was dead silent. Then came the final blow. "In my hand," he said, lifting a folder, "are 34 names. Children from this city, boys and girls who suffered in the same foster home Anna was placed in. Children who reported abuse. Children who were ignored." He held up a photo, a boy with bruises on his face. Another drawing, a hospital intake form. "I'm not just fighting for Anna. I'm fighting for every single one of them." He stepped back from the podium. Reporters began shouting questions. Cameras flashed. But Jonathan had said what he needed to say. He walked off the stage and into the hallway, heart pounding. George caught up to him. It's going viral already. Twitter, Facebook, local news sites. The CPS office just shut down their comment lines. Jonathan nodded. Good. Let them sweat. Ugh. Back at the hospital, Anna was asleep when he returned. The bear was tucked under her chin. A nurse had dimmed the lights. A soft lullaby playing faintly from a speaker. Jonathan sat beside her, lowering himself into the chair like a man who had climbed a mountain in one day. He took the bear back, rested it in his lap, and watched her breathe. You're safe, he whispered. And for the first time since Claire's funeral, Jonathan Rhys allowed himself to believe it. Not just for Anna, but for something bigger. Something that might finally, truly change. Night had barely fallen when Jonathan returned to the hospital, his coat heavy with the chill of Manhattan Dickensian winter. The air inside felt warmer, softer like hope. Anna remained asleep in her bed, clutching her bear even tighter. But hope wasn't all that weighed on him now. His phone vibrated relentlessly. Notifications. Messages from civil rights lawyers volunteering help. Celebrities offering support. Ordinary citizens outraged. A flurry of social media posts turned Anna's story into a viral wave of sympathy and fury. Yet, beneath the public emotion lurked another force. Darker. George's text had been urgent. Hearing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Judge Harrison. They're coming. Jonathan took a breath and sat beside Anna, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. He felt like he'd been both frozen and ignited. Quietly, he whispered, We're ready. At home later that night, Jonathan and George reviewed documents by lamplight. A stack of filings from CPS attorneys claimed Jonathan had unlawfully influenced the case, abused his power, and undermined due process. They were asking the court for an emergency override to strip Jonathan of guardianship and return Anna to state custody before dawn. But the law favored Jonathan's position. According to child welfare statutes, emergency removal hearings must be held quickly within as little as 24 hours of the petition. CPS argued that Rhys's public broadcast tainted the process. Jonathan's team argued that Anna herself had been endangered by inaction and the silence of institutions. The law, as analyzed by experts, also restricts removal once a guardian files a legitimate injunction, especially when a child is already stabilized medically. Morning arrived with a crystalline clarity. Jonathan entered the courtroom early. Reporters crowded the hall. A dozen cameras pointed at the courtroom door. As he waited, he felt his past Claire's absence. His failures. The corporate wars fade into insignificance. Judge Harrison entered at 9:07 a.m. just on time. The session opened in hushed formality. CPS counsel argued Anna had been improperly influenced by Rhys's viral publicity, claiming the child's best interests required state oversight, free from potentially manipulative outside forces. Jonathan's lawyer responded calmly, invoking the Fourth Amendment and case law that emphasizes the state's duty to protect, not endanger, a child. They presented medical reports, Anna's malnourishment, fractured bones in stages of healing, and the recordings revealing her terror and isolation were all damning evidence of failure of CPS, not Jonathan. When asked to speak, Jonathan rose. His voice echoed in the courtroom, clear and steady. I stand before you not as a CEO, but as a man who heard a child's whisper and chose not to walk away. The system failed her. I won't fail her again. The room shifted, eyes on him, not politicians or pundits, only the raw truth. By mid-morning, Judge Harrison delivered a temporary injunction in Jonathan's favor. Anna would remain under his care pending a full hearing. CPS had limited options now. Any attempt to override could be seen as punitive rather than protective. Outside the courthouse, Jonathan addressed waiting cameras. Today's ruling isn't just about Anna. It's about the thousands of children unheard. If our institutions can fail her, he said, holding Anna's drawing me and Mr. J, they can fail any child. We cannot let that happen again. The camera lights flashed. A chorus of faces in approval. Back at the hospital, he returned to Anna. Her eyes fluttered open when she saw him. Tears still faint at the corners. You did it, she whispered. He smiled, wiping her cheek. We did it together. Anna reached up and poked his nose. You're my hero. We're just two people who care, he said, voice thick. Now, would you like that dog? Her grin lit the room. Outside, the uproar he'd anticipated had already begun. CPS spokespeople promising reforms, district attorneys opening internal investigations, city council members proposing a new bill inspired by Anna's story, aimed at closing gaps in foster care oversight. Jonathan sat back, the roar of the world filtering in. For once, the fight wasn't about money or boardrooms, it was about voices, justice, and a quiet girl who dared to whisper. And now, the silence would never be ignored again. The next few days unfolded like a tide pulling in both danger and destiny. Anna remained in the hospital, surrounded by cautious kindness, a therapist who sang old gospel hymns softly as she worked, nurses who wore their smiles like armor against despair, and Jonathan, who never let a single night pass without sitting beside her until she drifted to sleep. Outside, the media had given her a name, the Whisper Girl. A moniker that struck Jonathan like lightning every time he heard it. It made her sound like a ghost, something fragile and half gone. But Anna wasn't a ghost. She was alive. Laughing more often now, asking questions, drawing stories where wolves were scared of little girls, and closets had doors that only opened to the sun. And she was remembering more. It started with colors. The light in the closet was red, like blood, she told the trauma counselor. Then came smells. He wore something that made my nose burn, like paint. And finally, a name. Not just Daddy Marcus, as she'd called her abuser before, but Mr. Banks, the name from the sealed records George had uncovered. She must have overheard it, Jonathan said in a meeting with George and the therapist. And buried it, the way she did everything else. It's a breadcrumb, George said. We're close. Anna sat outside the room with her coloring book, while the adults conspired on her behalf. She didn't know about court dates or warrants. She didn't care about politics or public perception. What she cared about was the new dog Jonathan had promised her, and whether she'd get to name it. Later that afternoon, Jonathan took her on a field trip. The security was discreet but tight. 2 guards shadowed them, one in the lobby and another outside the building. But inside the animal shelter on 92nd Street, Anna didn't notice anything except the row of eager, wagging tails. Which one looks brave to you? Jonathan asked as she walked down the row of kennels. Anna paused in front of a big, shaggy mutt with a crooked tail and mismatched eyes. He looked like he'd seen 1,000 storms and survived every single one. This one, she whispered. Jonathan crouched beside her. He's old. Anna looked up. Old dogs need love too. The shelter volunteer smiled. His name's Copper. He's gentle. And house. Trained. Jonathan nodded. We'll take him. The next morning, the headlines had changed. Not just about Anna, but about systemic accountability. The mayor announced a task force to reevaluate CPS oversight. Whistleblowers from inside the system began coming forward. One, a former caseworker named Denise Lowell, confessed that she'd flagged Marcus Hale multiple times, but her reports had been buried. I was told to stop asking questions, she said during a local television interview. That the foster homes were overloaded and to be grateful we had bodies to place kids with. Ugh. Jonathan watched the interview with Anna asleep beside him, her head on his shoulder, Copper curled at her feet. The fire in his chest reignited. It wasn't enough to rescue one girl. The whole damn house needed to be torn down. George called an hour later. We found Hale. Jonathan stood instantly. Where? Baltimore. Checked into a motel under the name Trevor Banks. He used an old ID. Someone tipped us off. Our team's already there with local PD. Will they bring him in? They'll try, but he's running scared. Might not come quietly. Jonathan turned toward the window, the skyline stretching like armor before him. Good. Let him be scared. That night, after Anna was asleep, he sat by her bed, the soft hum of machines and the faint snoring of Copper filling the quiet. He looked at her, this child who had been abandoned, beaten, starved, assaulted, and now, somehow, had managed to color a picture of a house with a rainbow roof and a garden full of sunflowers. "You are not the Whisper Girl," he said softly, brushing her hair back. "You are a storm in silence. And I will make sure the world remembers it." At 11:37 p.m., George called again. "He's in custody, no resistance. He was hiding in a maintenance closet when they found him." "Oh," Jonathan smiled. But there was no joy in it. Just cold resolve. "Let's make sure the charges stick. Every single one." "We will." Jonathan hung up, turned off the light, and sat back. Anna stirred, opened her eyes halfway. "Was that about him?" "Yes," Jonathan said. "Did they get him?" "They did." She stared at the ceiling for a moment, then closed her eyes. "Good." Then she fell back asleep. In the quiet, Jonathan felt something shift. Not closure, but maybe a beginning. The morning light filtered through pale curtains as Jonathan crouched beside Anna's bed. Copper lay curled at her feet, one ear perked, as if listening. Anna had slept more soundly these past days. Before she woke, Jonathan straightened the stuffed bear in her arms and inhaled the quiet. When her eyelids fluttered open, she blinked up at him with sleepy blue eyes. "Morning, sunshine," he whispered. She yawned, then smiled faintly. "Did they get him for sure?" For its safety and emotional seriousness, let's add that in most states, emergency removal hearings must happen within 48 to 72 hours of removal, and a full adjudicatory hearing is required within 15 to 30 days. Jonathan reached out, brushing her hair back. "Yes. He's in custody now. The system can't hurt you anymore, not with us watching." She nodded, eyes drifting to the window. He paused. "It will, and the good thing is, you're helping it get better, not just for you." Outside the small hospital room, the world was shifting. When the hearing ended, Judge Harrison had issued a protective order and scheduled the next hearing in 2 weeks, compressing the usual timeline in light of Anna's trauma. Typically, courts must hold a detention hearing within 48-72 hours. Jurisdictional hearings can follow within 15-30 days. In her case, the court moved faster because she wasn't just a case file. She was a child with a voice. In the hallway later, Jonathan met with Denise Lowell, the former caseworker who had bravely come forward. Her eyes were red, her composure raw. "I should have kept pushing," she said. "But I was told. Family preservation, placement quotas. If I gave everyone safe homes, CPS wouldn't look incompetent." Jonathan held her gaze. "You're doing it now." Her shoulders shifted. "What can I do?" He turned. "Help us reform the system. Talk. Be loud." That afternoon, Anna's therapist invited Jonathan to sit in on a session. Anna, armed with crayons and coloring sheets, was asked to draw her safe house. She drew heavy walls but with open windows, and a dog sleeping beside the door, clearly Copper again, now named. Then she colored a heart, scribbling inside it. "Justice." Jonathan met her gaze, and she nodded. In the evening, over takeout in his penthouse, Jonathan showed Denise the latest draft of legislation he was helping fund, Anna's Voice Act, modeled partly on recently proposed reforms like New York's Kyra's Law. It would mandate swift hearings, child safety evaluations before granting custody or visitation, and independent advocacy for children. Denise leaned forward. "It's more than bills. It means they have to listen." "Exactly," Jonathan said quietly. "No child should be forced to disappear into the system's silence." Anna, dressed in pajamas identical to those her mother might have picked out years ago, fell asleep peacefully as Jonathan tucked her in. He paused at the door. Pausing before the bear she'd drawn him earlier lay on the bed. Outside, city life pulsed emergency vans, news drones, community members rallying. CPS released a statement acknowledging the failures and pledging an internal review. Activists rallied behind the proposed law. Journalists hailed the Whisper Girl as both survivor and catalyst. Jonathan knew the fight wasn't over. There would be hearings, wrangling, resistance. But Anna had staked her claim, and millions had started to listen. He slipped away into the night, determination in his heart. Because now, justice wasn't just his mission, it was Anna's too. and everyone within earshot would finally have to answer. Sunlight filtering through sheer curtains fell gently across Anna's face as she stirred awake. It was Saturday, and for once, Jonathan Rhys felt free enough to offer her a small taste of normalcy. The hum of Manhattan life outside contrasted deeply with the sanctuary they'd carved within these hospital walls. "Good morning," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair away from her forehead. Copper's tail thumped twice against the quilt. She blinked sleepily. "Are we going somewhere today?" "Something like that," he replied, helping her sit up. "How do you feel about pancakes?" Her smile was immediate, bright and fearless. "Yes, please." Jonathan chuckled and gently squeezed her hand. "Let's get dressed." Downstairs, the hospital staff exchanged smiles as Anna walked by, hand in hand with Rhys. Copper padded loyally behind them. Today's project, a visit to a local church serving free breakfast to community kids. He wanted Anna to feel the pulse of kindness that sustained neighborhoods, not just courtrooms. She deserved to know she belonged. The church's doors opened wide, filled with the aroma of griddle and syrup. Volunteers welcomed them, offering hugs and waffles shaped like hearts. "Because we care," one woman said, placing a plate before Anna. The congregation, an intergenerational circle of older black and white parishioners, nodded in greeting. Anna responded with shy nods and muffled thank yous, slowly unwrapping her heart-shaped treat. At a table nearby, Denise Lowell sat with a cup of coffee and local news clippings about the proposed Anna's Voice Act community support soaring. She waved them over. "Come sit with me," she offered. "This place has been a lighthouse the past few days." Jonathan and Anna settled beside her. A gray-haired church elder, Mr. Harris, leaned over. "Blessed you found this, angel," he said softly. "In our town, we look out for each other." Anna quietly munched her pancake. Later, after finishing, she smiled up at Jonathan. "This place feels warm," she said. "Like sunshine on my skin." He smiled back, warmth blooming in his chest. After breakfast, Denise stood and raised her voice gently. "Everyone, meet your newest neighbor," she announced. "This is Anna. And thanks to all of you." Her voice is rising. The room filled with applause, soft but sincere. Community leaders approached Jonathan afterward, offering resources. A place for Anna, if she needed a temporary foster. Like environment once cleared, therapy referrals rooted in trauma, informed care, even local musicians offering lullaby concerts. A teen offering piano lessons. An older woman offering to teach knitting so Anna could make blankets warmed by love. Jonathan's heart swelled. This wasn't just goodwill, it was belief. People believing Anna belonged in their world, in their hearts. As they walked home, Anna held Copper's leash and chatted about planting sunflowers. "Like in my drawing." She asked Jonathan what a guardian does. He knelt at her eye level. "A guardian listens, protects, and stands up for you always. And loves you." She nodded gravely. That afternoon, in his office, Jonathan stared at photos of today. Anna laughing, church goers smiling, Copper wagging near the altar. He arranged them into a digital collage, ready to share on social media, not as a PR statement, but as tangible proof of a community that heals through connection. He posted, "Today we witnessed something incredible. Anna reminded us all how powerful kindness can be. Thank you, community, for standing with her. Let's keep her voice alive." Number: Anna's voice. Within minutes, hearts and shares poured in. Local businesses pledged support for therapy costs. A nearby bookstore offered to host story hours. A reporter texted, asking permission to feature Anna's drawing and journey. Anna's voice, not solitary anymore. Later that night, Anna lay snug in bed, Copper curled up below. She held her drawing, a yellow house with sunflowers, and whispered, "This was real today, right?" Jonathan kissed her head. "It was, and we'll keep making more days like that." Her breath slowed. Safe sleep claimed her. Jonathan sat back, watching her chest rise in steady rhythm. Outside, the city's lights blinked like stars that refused to forget. He felt something shift in him too, not just the ache of loss healed a bit by connection, but the recognition that real power isn't wielded in boardrooms. It's forged in moments of shared humanity. Tomorrow the fight would continue: court hearings, lawmaking, revealing more systemic failures. But tonight, he would rest. Tonight, there was a little girl healed enough to eat pancakes among strangers who treated her like family, and that was victory enough for one day. Sunlight filtered through Anna's hospital room window, casting gentle warmth across the white sheets. Copper sat loyally at her side, head resting on her lap. Anna was humming a simple tune, a melody of safety, her eyes reflecting more trust than Jonathan had ever seen before. Jonathan sat beside her, reviewing legal notes for the coming weeks. The court's temporary injunction meant Anna could stay with him for now, but the road ahead was long. A detention hearing within 72 hours, followed by a jurisdictional hearing within 15 to 30 days, and then a dispositional hearing within about 30 days, where the permanent plan for Anna's future would be laid out. These are standard timelines across the U.S. child welfare system. End of view. Anna looked up. "Mr. Reese?" He smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. Are they going to let me stay with you forever?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You're safe now. That's the most important thing. We're in court, building your future step by step." Her small face scrunched. "What's a dispositional hearing?" He took a breath. "That's where the court decides if you'll have a safe, permanent home. Maybe you stay with me, or with someone else who loves you." Anna nodded slowly. "I want to stay with you." His heart clenched. Later that morning, Jonathan and Denise met with legislators at City Hall. The Anna's Voice Act was gaining traction. It proposed tightening hearing deadlines, mandating independent child advocates, and requiring oversight of CPS caseloads, drawing on statutes like the Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA, which pushed for permanency within 15 months to avoid foster care drift. The draft acknowledged systemic failures that delayed safeguards. Anna rested in his office later, coloring quietly. He watched her. In her world, colors held memory, comfort. He offered landmarks she recognized: a sun, a rainbow, copper at the door. He began speaking softly, telling her, "Every step we take in court helps make sure this story ends with you safe, with a home that doesn't just house you, but protects you." Later, Jonathan stood outside CPS headquarters with Denise and other advocates. Media had swarmed the building, reporters lining the sidewalk, community members holding signs reading, "Justice for Anna," and "No more silence." It felt surreal. From that vulnerable whisper on the sidewalk to a movement for legislative change, a former foster youth, now an activist, spoke publicly. "Kids like Anna often disappear when abuse threatens them. We're here to fight so no one else remains unheard," Denise added. "We're building more than one safe place. We're building a system where children like Anna don't just survive but thrive." Evening came, and Jonathan returned to the hospital. Anna was watching cartoons. Copper wagged when he walked in. "How many more hearings?" she asked, turning to him. He paused. "A few big ones coming up. But..." He knelt and hugged her gently. "No matter what happens, I made you a promise. I won't let you disappear again." Anna smiled, then whispered, "Thank you for hearing me." He held her, letting that small truth settle in both their hearts. Outside, the city pulsed, but inside that room, a foundation was being built, not just for a child, but for change. For a broken system slowly answering a whisper. Morning light filtered through the ward's curtains, illuminating Anna's gentle breathing and Copper's content snoozing at her feet. Jonathan gently shifted her quilt, careful not to wake her from a night of peaceful rest. Her healing had become a delicate journey, one measured not just in physical scars fading, but in trust gradually returning, heartbeat by heartbeat. He carried a stack of legal briefs to his desk in the adjoining office. The court had scheduled their jurisdictional hearing for 2 days from now. It was the moment when the court formally determines Anna's legal status, whether she remains in his guardianship pending a permanent plan. Under the Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA, courts must push toward permanency within strict timelines, usually 15 of the past 22 months in care-triggering proceedings, and hold permanency hearings every 12 months, unless exceptions apply. But for Anna, every day had felt like time stolen. each moment heightened in urgency. Jonathan was determined that her future would not hinge on bureaucratic clocks. He had asked George to prepare a motion reflecting her trauma, her resilience, and the moral imperative to protect her from further harm. At midday, Denise Lowell arrived early with fresh optimism. "The committee met yesterday," she announced, sweeping legal pads and folder of letters onto his desk. "Support is building. Sponsors from both parties signed on. Lawmakers are seeing this as more than just policy, it's humanity." Jonathan looked up, meeting her steady gaze. "Then let's do our part to keep it human." Denise pulled out a letter from a group of foster parents. They'd seen the story and pledged to stand as mentors for Anna, to offer her milestones: 4th of July barbecues, family dinners, summer camps. They want to show her what home can feel like before it becomes official. He nodded, deeply moved. That's exactly what she needs. Late afternoon found him walking through a local legal clinic, a community initiative now helping parents at risk of separation, ensuring they had access to rehabilitation or support to reduce entries into foster care. He paused at a bulletin board where pictures of children and their adoptive families were posted grins wide, arms wrapped around forever homes. Beneath each photograph was a caption: "We found each other. Eventually." He added Anna's drawing to the board, her yellow house with sunflowers, so other children could know. They too deserve that kind of bright promise. Evening came with a quiet solemnity. Anna sat beside him as he reviewed case notes. She fiddled with Copper's ears, whispering thoughts about school, friends, and whether she could someday plant real sunflowers in his garden. He paused. "There's something I want to read you," he said. He held up a packet, the judge's proposed ruling. It acknowledged her ongoing trauma, recommended a full psychological assessment, and tentatively set a path for guardianship, contingent on her wishes when she's older. It leaned toward a permanency plan with him, not adoption today, but a bond cemented in love and legality. Anna studied his face. "That means, me and you?" He smiled, swallowing back tears. "It means you belong here. Legally. Permanently. Because you deserve safety." Her small hand found his, warm and steady. "I want that." "Well," he squeezed gently. "I know." That night, after Anna drifted to sleep, he stared out at the glittering city. In a few days, they would stand in court again, not as strangers, but as two souls tightly bound by justice and trust. He whispered into the stillness, "Let this be the chapter where she finds home." And in that whisper, the promise of permanence rang louder than any legal mandate. Morning entered Anna's room like a gentle promise. Copper stirred at the foot of her bed, and Anna blinked awake. Jonathan was already there, reviewing a stack of court documents. Today was the dispositional hearing, the day the court begins shaping Anna's long-term future. In many jurisdictions, this hearing follows the jurisdictional hearing within 30 days, and determines case planning, whether the child is returned to a parent, placed in foster care, or under guardianship. Anna yawned and shifted. "Is today the big day?" Jonathan smiled, gathering his composure. "Yes, but whatever happens, I've got you." Later, in the courthouse, the halls were buzzing. Journalists waited. Community members wearing pins that read "Anna's Voice" stood in solidarity, and attorneys scrambled over notes. Jonathan sat before Judge Harrison, with George to his right and Denise just behind. CPS representatives delivered their case. They acknowledged past failures and argued that a permanency plan with Jonathan, who had shown stability, care, and devotion itself, offered a safe path forward. The system contributed to Anna's trauma, they conceded, but today, her best chance lay in a supportive, enduring home. Jonathan's attorney presented a detailed report. Anna's medical condition was stabilizing. Her psychological assessments indicated growing trust and resilience. And community support, including the church, the foster mentors, and advocacy groups, confirmed a network strong enough to raise a child properly. Attached was Anna's drawing of the yellow house, and the sunflowers her vision of home. Judge Harrison listened intently. At one point, he looked directly at Anna, who sat quietly, clutching Copper's leash. When it was Jonathan's moment, he rose. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. "Your Honor, This isn't just a legal guardianship request. It's a commitment. I know the timelines, the statutes for instance. ASFA pushes for permanency within specified months and urges termination of parental rights when a child remains in care for 15 of the last 22 months. But those are frameworks for a broken system. Anna is not a risk to me, she is my responsibility. She already belongs here. I beg you, let her remain where she is safe, loved, and heard. Every word was deliberate. Every beat carried the weight of a vow. After brief deliberation, Judge Harrison spoke. I am persuaded. The court grants Jonathan Reese guardianship of Anna. Further review hearings will occur semi-annually to monitor her well-being, but this court finds no compelling reason to separate her from a home built on love and commitment. A hush lifted. Denise exhaled. Jonathan collected himself, his chest tight. Anna's small hand slipped into his as they exited the courtroom. Outside, the waiting crowd erupted in applause. News cameras recorded the moment a dad, a little girl with Copper by her side, stepping into a future shaped by justice and humanity. Back at the hospital, Anna hugged Copper and Drew again. This time, a wide-open door, sunshine pouring inside. She looked up at Jonathan shyly. Does that mean I don't have to move? He smiled, tears threatening. That's right, kid. You get to stay. That night, as Anna slept, Jonathan reflected on the pilgrimage. From a whisper in the cold to the warmth of permanence. He looked at the drawing this time. It wasn't just a fantasy. It was real. And in that quiet, the foundation of her new life built on trust, law, and love stood firm and whole. A weekend sunlight filtered through the hospital room curtains, warming Anna's face. Copper lay curled up beside her bed, his tail twitching now and then. Today was the day they would leave the hospital. Today, they would go home. Jonathan entered quietly, carrying a backpack filled with Anna's few belongings. PJs, crayons, and her favorite bear. She stirred, blinking awake. Are we going home today? She asked, her voice small. He knelt beside her and nodded, heart brimming. Yes, sweetheart. Today is the day you finally go home. In the hospital lobby, staff waved tearful goodbyes. Nurses folded blankets gently. A therapist knelt to offer one last hug, and Anna gripped Copper's leash. As they exited, Anna paused, looking back. Thank you, she whispered to the nurses. One of them smiled back, saying, Remember, you're safe now. The drive back to Reese's apartment felt surreal. Anna sat in the passenger seat, clutching Copper's leash. Outside the window, Manhattan streets passed brownstones, corner markets, people bundled against winter's chill. No boardrooms, no reporters. Just the city breathing around them. Jonathan pulled up in front of a modest but warmly lit townhome in a quiet neighborhood near the church they'd visited. He unlocked the door and held it open for Anna. Welcome home, he said gently. Anna stepped inside, her eyes wide. The living room was cozy plush couch, bookshelves, a fireplace with a mantel already decorated with her drawing of the yellow house. Copper sniffed around, then sat down on the rug, looking content. Warmth radiated through the room, and for the first time, home felt like more than a place. Jonathan guided her to the kitchen. Want a snack? He offered hot cocoa and a plate of freshly baked sugar cookies. Copper wagged expectantly. Anna nodded and chose 2 cookies, one for her and one for him. She crunched thoughtfully, looking around. It smells like Christmas, she said. Jonathan smiled. That's because this is your place now. He gestured to walls adorned with pictures, the community breakfast photo, a few photos of Anna's drawings, and a family photo with Joseph, the church elder, smiling warmly beside them. They moved to the living room, and Anna curled up on the couch with Copper by her side. Jonathan sat next to her. Do you want to explore your room? He asked. She nodded, eyes sparkling. He led her up the stairs to a small room painted in soft yellow. A bed waited, covered with blankets she had chosen at the hospital, soft with sunflowers embroidered along the edge. A small bookshelf held her coloring supplies, and sunshine poured in through a window painted with a mural of sunflowers. Anna turned and hugged him. I love it. He kissed her forehead. Glad you do. That evening, community volunteer Mrs. Harris, who'd hosted the breakfast, arrived at the door with a warm pot of soup and a casserole. Just thought you might not feel like cooking tonight, she said, smiling. Welcome home, dear. Anna helped carry dishes and even set the table. They ate by lamplight, the soft glow reflecting in her eyes. Between bites, she said, I had a dream last night. I was planting flowers, and they all grew so tall. Jonathan reached across the table. That's a very good dream. Later, Anna climbed into her new bed with Copper curled beside her. She clutched her bear and whispered, Thank you for giving me a home. Jonathan watched from the doorway, voice choking softly. There's nothing I'd want more than that. He shut the door and stood in the hallway, listening to the quiet hum of the home, no monitors, no hospital bustle. Just warmth and breaths of the familiar. He allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing this was more than a victory in court. This was the promise kept. Tomorrow, life would continue. Therapy, school enrollment, court check-ins. But tonight was simply home. A little girl safe in a room she chose, wrapped in love she deserved, and that was worth every battle. A pale morning sun peeked through the thin curtains in Anna's bedroom. The house was quiet. Copper lay at the foot of her bed, and for once, Jonathan didn't rush in. He watched Anna sleep, her breathing slow and peaceful. No monitors, no hospital hum. Just home. He stirred her gently. Hey, sweetheart, he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. Good morning, she murmured. Today we have a hearing, he said, touching her hand softly. Her smile was small but bright. Then it's almost forever? Almost, he promised. Another step. Later, they arrived at the courthouse, the pathway lined with signs. Anna's Voice Act banners fluttered alongside local families who'd rallied for reform. A group of children survivors like Anna stood nearby holding hands, their faces a mixture of hope and curiosity. Inside, George and the legal team positioned themselves. Judge Harrison entered and called the session to order. Today's hearing would double as a permanency, review a required court check-in, typically scheduled every 6 months, following the dispositional hearing, but in special cases expedited to assess the child's living situation, well-being, and path forward. First, CPS presented a concise update. Anna had safe, stable housing. Community support systems were active. Therapy had been meaningful. School placement arranged. They acknowledged Jonathan's guardianship served her best interests now. The tone was humbler than before. They'd learned. Anna colored quietly beside him, her book filled with sunflowers and open doors. Then Denise, speaking as an advocate, added testimony. This home isn't just safe, it's thriving. Anna's voice guides her choices. That's the bedrock of permanency. When Jonathan stood to speak, his voice was quieter than before, but no less powerful. Today is not a conclusion, but a confirmation, he said. Anna deserves to grow up rooted, not subject to fleeting systems. She deserves every chance to bloom. After a brief deliberation, Judge Harrison delivered his ruling. Anna would remain in Jonathan's guardianship with scheduled 6-month reviews for the next year. Sufficient grounds existed to chart a path to legal adoption when appropriate, and all parties agreed to support Audrey as she flourished. Back on the courthouse steps, reporters asked questions, but Anna tugged Jonathan's sleeve. Now can we go home and plant my sunflowers? She asked. He lifted her onto his shoulders. Absolutely. They returned home through city streets alive with community spirit, neighbors waving, children calling out. At home, they stepped into the garden, fresh soil laid, seeds ready. Anna knelt, Copper sniffing near, and began planting sunflower seeds. With each scoop of dirt and seed dropped, she whispered, Here we grow. Jonathan stood beside her, feeling the entire world shift beneath his feet. Anna's whispers had become roots deep, lasting, and steady. In her new home, her life, her permanence, she was finally safe. And for that, everything had been worth fighting for. Morning sunlight streamed into the garden, where tiny sunflower sprouts had begun to signal life. Anna crouched, gloved hands gently patting soil around the fragile green shoots. Copper sniffed nearby, tail wagging with soft conviction. The air smelled of fresh earth and promise. Jonathan stood on the porch, coffee in hand and heart quiet with awe. He watched Anna, so small and yet so grounded now, placing her trust in seeds and sunshine. The roots she planted did more than tether plants, they grounded her soul too. Later, over pancakes in the warm kitchen, Anna chattered about school. "There's a friend named Mia. She likes math like me." Jonathan smiled, pouring syrup. "That's wonderful. Maybe you can show her your sunflower drawing someday?" Anna giggled. "Only if Copper helps." He laughed as she wrangled the fluffy dog to sit. Her laughter felt like sunlight in human form. At lunch, Denise stopped by, contagious enthusiasm in her presence. "The committee loved your testimony. The education department wants to pilot trauma-informed classrooms in your district." Jonathan felt the impact, the ripple of one little girl's voice extending into policy, into the lives of other children. Anna, listening nearby, asked with innocent curiosity, "Does that mean no one else will get lost like me?" Denise knelt to meet her gaze. "It's a start. We remember you, so now we remember them too." That afternoon, Anna's therapist arrived for a home visit. The cozy living room felt alive, sunlight caught on picture frames, plants reached for the window, and Anna's room down the hall held promise. The therapist marveled at Anna's drawings, her progress in naming emotions, her calm with Copper curled at her feet. Later, after the therapist left, Anna said, "I drew a sunflower with a door inside." Jonathan tilted his head. "A door inside a sunflower?" She nodded, smiling quietly. "So people can come in and feel the warmth." He wrapped an arm around her. Perfect. Evening settled. Jonathan sat with Anna and Copper before the fireplace. The little house of warmth filled with their quiet bond. Anna yawned. "Tomorrow is 6 months, isn't it?" He nodded. "Yes." "Then we see the judge again." She paused, looking at the flames. "Do you think the judge will be happy?" He held her gaze. "He already was. He wants you safe. You're safe." She smiled. "Home is safe." He kissed her forehead. "Yes, home is safe." Later, tucked into bed with Copper at her feet, Anna whispered, "Thank you for growing with me." Jonathan closed the door, butterflies in his chest. Outside, the city hummed on. But inside the home, peace thrived in roots, in safety, in love that had finally grown tall enough to hold them both. Sunlight filtered through the living room curtains, telling Jonathan it was morning again, but a morning like no other. He watched Anna, now 6 months older, wandering between her bookshelf and pillows, an unread book in one hand and Copper trotting at her side. Today marked 1 year since that whisper in the cold changed everything. Jonathan called softly, "Happy Us Day." That was their new word. Us. Day, the anniversary, when the world became us, not them. Anna grinned. "Happy Us Day, Mr. Reese." She ran to hug him, drawing him into her warmth. Later, they stepped into the garden. The sunflowers, tall and golden-headed, swayed gently. Anna placed her small hand against a stalk, whispering, "Remember when you planted me too?" Jonathan nodded, throat tight. Her roots and hers had grown in parallel. Over brunch, cooked by Mrs. Harris, the church elder who'd made their first breakfast feel like home, Jonathan and Anna sat at the table laden with pancakes, fruit, and laughter. The community had come, neighbors bringing gifts, handmade picture frames, a knitted blanket, a scrapbook filled with news clippings and Anna's photos. Jonathan flipped through the pages. Next to a newspaper photo of the courtroom victory was a drawing Anna had done of them standing in front of a courthouse, holding hands. At the bottom, in her wobbly script, "Justice is home." His heart stung. That afternoon, they walked to the courthouse for a 6-month review hearing. The judge greeted them warmly. Anna waved, then gripped Jonathan's hand. The court record was glowing. Evidence of emotional healing, consistent therapy, and community integration. The judge echoed what the system rarely says. "I'm proud of your journey, Anna. And proud of you, Mr. Reese." The hearing affirmed stable guardianship and set the next review for a year later. Outside the courthouse, Anna pointed to a group of young girls holding sunflowers, part of the advocacy initiative inspired by her story. "They're like me," she said. "Yes," Jonathan replied. You planted them. As evening descended, they returned home. The sunflower's petals caught the last golden light. Anna skipped ahead, touching each one. Copper nosed at the stems. Jonathan set up chairs in the backyard. Together with Denise, Mrs. Harris, and a handful of friends, they lit candles on a small cake, baked by Anna herself, sunflower seeds on top. Anna blew them out, eyes shining. She whispered, "Make a wish." Jonathan leaned in. "My wish is that every child in need finds a home as safe and loving as yours." She hugged him. "Mine is the same." That night, tucked into bed, Anna slept with Copper curled beside her, a sunflower drawing pinned above her bed. Jonathan stood in her doorway, watching. The house was quiet, but alive with story and safety. Today, permanence wasn't just a legal word. It was full of breath, laughter, growth, love. And that forever was already underway. Anna awoke to the gentle chime of wind chimes hanging by her window. The golden sunflowers stood tall outside, their heads turned to the light. Today marked the first full year since Jonathan had heard Anna's whisper, "It hurts, sir. Please help me," on that freezing sidewalk. What started as a single breath of vulnerability had become something far greater, her voice becoming a legacy. She padded into the living room where Jonathan awaited, pouring warm milk into 2 mugs. Copper bounded in too, excitement lighting up his fur. Anna grinned and planted both hands on Jonathan's knees. "Happy Uzaday anniversary," she beamed. Jonathan leaned down, kissing her forehead gently. "Happy Uzaday, Anna." His voice, steady but full of emotion, carried all they had endured and all they had built together. They stepped into the garden, where volunteers had decorated the sunflower patch with tiny ribbons and handwritten notes. "You are seen. You are heard." Neighbors gathered, children from church and school, lending sweet voices to a spontaneous choir singing, "Here Comes the Sunday." Anna stood at the center, Copper by her side, her sunlight. After the song, a local reporter approached not for headlines, but to celebrate. "Anna, how does it feel to see all of this?" She paused, thoughtful. "I feel..." Our whisper is loud now. Back indoors, they hosted a gathering. Denise, Mrs. Harris, legal advocates, and compassionate families who had rallied for reform. The table overflowed with fresh fruit, scones, and laughter. Jonathan raised a toast. To Anna, our reminder that even the quietest whisper can shift the world. Enders. Everyone clapped, some teary, all resolute. Later, Jonathan took Anna upstairs to her room where she climbed into bed, clutching her bear and Copper curled at the footboard. He sat beside her. "Tomorrow's the law vote," he said, referring to the Anna's Voice Act that had passed unanimously in committee and now faced a full legislative vote. Anna nodded, eyes heavy with sleep. "Will it help other kids?" "Yes," he promised. "It ensures no whisper like yours ever fades into silence again." "May." She gave a small nod, eyes closing. "Good night, my brave girl," he whispered. He stood, looking at the drawing above her bed, the yellow house, sunflowers, and the open door now stained with sunlight. Today, that symbol was no longer just art. It was a movement. Outside, city lights blinked, but inside, peace reigned. A child had spoken, a man had answered, and now, their shared legacy, justice, permanence, hope, would echo across countless futures. Humanity had listened, and in that, the whisper had become home. The story of Anna and Jonathan teaches us a profound lesson. Even the faintest cry for help when heard with compassion can spark life, altering change. It reminds us that justice is not found only in courtrooms, but in everyday acts of courage, empathy, and steadfast love. It calls on us to listen more deeply, act more bravely, and believe that healing is possible when community, kindness, and unwavering belief in a child's worth come together. Through one whisper, a home was built, and through that home, a legacy of hope was born.